Now, the lunchtime news on BBC One Scotland with Geeta, Guru-Murthy.
Good afternoon. It's believed that dozens of civilians have been released from a steel plant in the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol, where they've been trapped for many weeks in appalling conditions. Hundreds of others are still trapped there, along with Ukrainian troops still holding out against Russian forces. Joe Inwood has sent this report.
There is no doubt this is a breakthrough, albeit a small one. These shots were released by the Russian Ministry of Defence and claim to show the first group of civilians to leave the Azovstal steelworks. They've been trapped there for weeks, alongside the last Ukrainian forces in Mariupol, in increasingly dire conditions. The exact number who left is disputed. The Russians say 46 in two groups. They were then seen this morning arriving at a village near the Russian border. It's claimed they're being processed by separatists, although accompanied by UN and Red Cross staff. The Ukrainian deputy commander inside the steelworks confirmed the ceasefire had held, but said more people needed evacuation.
I emphasise that we want to guarantee the evacuation not just of civilians, but also our wounded servicemen, who require urgent medical attention.
Meanwhile, one of the most senior US politicians was in Kyiv. Nancy Pelosi's visit was signalling not just America's increased financial commitment to Ukraine, but also increasing diplomatic support.
We believe that we are visiting you to say thank you for your fight for freedom, that we are on a frontier of freedom, and that your fight is a fight for everyone. And so our commitment is to be there for you until the fight is done.
But Nancy Pelosi wasn't the only high-profile American visitor this weekend. The actress, activist and UN envoy Angelina Jolie has been here in Lviv. She visited the railway station, where she met children displaced by the conflict. And the numbers forced from their homes are increasing all the time. It's now thought 13 million people have been displaced by the conflict. There is no sign of that situation improving anytime soon. These Ukrainian forces are heading to the front lines of the Donbass. That is where, last night, President Zelensky said Russia was massing its forces ahead of an expected push. With many civilians still in their path, it will not just be soldiers who will pay with their lives. Joe Inwood, BBC News, Lviv.
The Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has called for a radical review of working practices following a series of sexual misconduct and bullying claims about politicians. Yesterday, the Conservative MP Neil Parish resigned after admitting he'd watched porn in Parliament. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, has denied there is a culture of misogyny at Westminster. Our political correspondent, Helen Catt, reports.
It's the admission that shocked Westminster. An MP watched porn in the Commons chamber.
What was going through your mind?
Moment of madness. Neil Parish's resignation has come at the end of a grim week for Parliament, which has seen accusations of misogyny and sexism fly. It started with a backlash to an article about Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner. Later in the week, a cabinet minister, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, described how she was pinned to a wall by a male MP. It's all raised fresh questions about the culture in the Commons.
I think we've got to distinguish between some bad apples, people who behave badly, and the general environment. It's just it's very similar to when people say, oh, well, there are a number of racist people in this country, so that means the whole country is racist. That doesn't follow. There are some bad apples. There are people who've acted very badly, and they should be held to account.
There have been suggestions that a mix of long hours, pressure and on-site bars is in part to blame.
Last week at Westminster, we were voting at midnight and many of us had been there. There was a gap in the day and many of us had been to events which had alcohol at, and the bars are obviously open, but we are social creatures and we do a lot of work whilst we're in those bars as well. I know that's not how it is going to be portrayed, but we do often sit down. We are talking about work and the work day.
Westminster doesn't run like some other workplaces. MPs directly employ their staff, making it difficult for some to raise concerns. The Speaker of the Commons says there should be an urgent review. He's calling for a type of inquiry last used in 2008 to look into it.
The Speaker, I think, wants to pull parties together to see what else can be done. I'm very happy to participate in that because we can't go on with these allegations coming out over and over again.
The SNP and the Liberal Democrats have confirmed they would take part. Parliament has, of course, been here before with allegations of poor behaviour. Changes were made. But will any new attempt alter the culture for good? Helen Catt, BBC News.
People in Scotland who test positive for COVID or have mild symptoms will no longer need to self-isolate from this weekend. Testing sites have now closed and contact tracing has ended. Our Scotland correspondent, Alexandra Mackenzie, is in Glasgow for us now. And Alexandra, is this a significant change in policy from government?
It is, yes, and it comes at a time when we see the number of people who have COVID in Scotland falling. That's been falling over the last 5 weeks. Now, 1 in 25 people are thought to have the virus now. This compares to 1 in 19 people last week. So from today, we're seeing a few changes. You will no longer have to self-isolate for a certain number of days, and you will no longer be required to take a PCR test. Now, the new advice is to stay at home, and that's while you're feeling unwell, while you're having these symptoms that you think could be coronavirus. However, if you're 18 or younger, you don't need to stay at home. If you have slight symptoms like a sore throat or a runny nose, you can still go to school or college or to work. Now, testing for the general population also comes to an end from this weekend. We're seeing mass testing centres here being closed down. But testing for workers in higher risk environments, that's like hospitals, so health and social care workers, that will remain. So we are seeing life in Scotland starting to come back to normal, but the advice is to wear face coverings in certain settings. And on Friday still there were more than 2,000 new cases of COVID.
Alexandra Mackenzie in Glasgow, many thanks. Now, doctors in India are warning that the country's record-breaking heatwave is creating a health emergency. Temperatures have hit more than 44 degrees in some areas after the hottest March recorded in more than 100 years. The Prince of Wales has urged people to protect the nation's ancient trees in honour of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this year. The initiative, called the Queen's Green Canopy, has identified 70 areas across the UK where trees and woodlands need protection. Some are 1,000 years old. History was made in the early hours of this morning as Ireland's Katie Taylor retained her undisputed world lightweight boxing title at Madison Square Garden in New York. She beat Puerto Rico's Amanda Serrano on points with a split decision victory. It's the first time 2 female fighters have headlined the iconic venue. Our correspondent Adi Adedoyan was watching.
And still the undisputed worldwide champion of the world.
Katie Taylor retaining her world titles after a battling and bruising encounter. A career-defining performance and a defining night for the sport. Serrano, all smiles on the way to the ring. Taylor, calm and composed. But it didn't take long for things to heat up. Both found the target early, then Taylor decided to fight fire with fire in the 5th and almost paid the price. The champion showing incredible reserves of courage to survive over the next 2 rounds. But in the fight of fluctuating fortunes, she rallied in the late rounds. The final few seconds of the bout, an incredible feat. A brilliant finish to a brilliant contest.
A performance from both fighters that more than lived up to the occasion. This was billed as the biggest bout in women's boxing, and what a way to write their names in the history of this iconic venue.
It was absolutely special moment. The best night in my career for sure. I wasn't sure if anything could reach my Olympic gold medal moment, but tonight was absolutely the best moment of my career.
The fight lived up to the hype, and there's already a clamour for a rematch, possibly in Ireland. This blockbuster bout, the perfect showcase for the rise of women's boxing. Adi Adedoyan, BBC News, New York.
You can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 5:35. Bye for now.